You know what? I'm not gonna lie. In a world that is so intent on fast forwarding to Christmas after Halloween is past, it's nice that somebody out there, especially in cinema, will acknowledge the other little in-betweener holiday, National Genocide Day, if you will. This is very fitting.
It is going to be a very happy Thanksgiving.
Let's see.
And today we have Thanksgiving. I guess you couldn't really call it Thanksgiving because technically that movie does in fact already exist. For better or for worse. You gotta be into a certain type of movie to enjoy this movie. But yeah, if you didn't know, Thanksgiving is the new holiday horror slasher film by director Eli Roth. And you might recognize this fella either by name or by his glorious visage here. For better or for worse, I like him. Funny enough, even though technically his second most recent feature film that he did was a documentary back in 2021 called Finn about sharks and trying to promote helping them. I think it was about the hunting of sharks. Pleasantly surprised to see him expand his portfolio in that regard. I'm not gonna call him like the king of horror, but he definitely, in my opinion, he makes very memorable, passionate horror projects. A couple titles, a couple names that are in there. One of which so he's worked with Tarantino in the past, Quentin Tarantino, who you gotta know that name. That directors will do this thing. They'll put their name on something to like help a friend of theirs get their film recognized. Eli Roth directed Hostel, which I don't know if it's his most well-known film, but it's definitely one of his most violent films. But he did Hostel, but it says like, if it's not too blurry, it says Quentin Tarantino presents an Eli Roth film, but that type of deal. It's a mix of Hostel and Cabin Fever is the other one, like the early 2000s Cabin Fever that I think really helped Eli Roth wet his beak, get his foot in the door in the horror communities and become more well-known for that. Granted, he is also like a writer, an actor, and all that. You might recognize him as Donnie Donowitz from Inglourious Bastards, so affectionately named the Bear Jew, as he beat Nazis to death with a baseball bat, which, you know, good for him. He always returns to horror one way or another. He decided, I haven't watched any interviews about why he chose to do it, but I like to just let it remain a bit of a mystery. And he's like, you know what, I've always wanted to make a Thanksgiving-themed horror film, and now here we are. The cast, I really only want to throw a couple names out there because there's honestly, it's a mixture of actors where you would look and say, who the hell is that? And you look and say, oh, cool little cameos here and there. Our leading lady turned final girl, more or less, like semi-final girl, I don't know, but Addison Rae, she's the main protagonist in this film, for lack of a better term. She's been in almost nothing. If you Google her, it's like, what does it say? A singer and like online media personality. One of those, I think she's a borderline like TikToker, honestly. The only other two features she's been in are a couple films that I will never watch. I have no desire to see them. That is He's All That. And apparently she plays this animated cat in a movie called Marnie's World. I don't know, man, but she's the leading lady in this, so, you know, good for her for landing a bigger, like, somewhat blockbuster-y role. And the other one, just want to give him a shout out because he's one of those faces where I knew I recognized the face, and he's one of the main characters in this film as well. But when you dig into his filmography, you truly realize how broad his filmography is, and I'm kind of impressed by it. But Patrick Dempsey, who has been acting since 85, and the mix of films that he did, anything from, he'll do like a horror slasher like this and then do like a made-for-TV drama. I'm really like impressed and pleasantly surprised to see this actor taking on like literally all types of different roles, and I actually really liked his role in this film as well. The only other mentionables, I guess, are the two guys competing for our main character's affection. There are a couple of boys. I mean, it is what it is. They literally are. lot of the characters in this movie are, you know, stereotypical or the archetypes you often would find in a slasher film like this. And there's some fun cameos and all that. Tim Dillon slipped by me. Honestly, I didn't realize it was him until the credits rolled. But anyway, Thanksgiving, how is the big question. I remember hearing the announcement for it, and I think I saw like the first trailer or two, and I knew I was going to watch it, but I didn't think it was going to be great, honestly. I thought it kind of had this cheesy vibe to it. The trailers do a good job of like showcasing and teasing some of the kills and the violence, but it made it seem like it was going to be just a schlocky B horror movie type of deal. And like, yes and no. Like, I was pleasantly surprised. This is the kind of slasher film that I like to see. Now, regardless of its like the thematic nature of it being a holiday thing, like a Thanksgiving horror film. I mean, we've seen Christmas horror films, we've seen St. Patrick's Day horror films. There's something about seasonal or holiday horror films, and they either work really well or they don't work well at all. But what I want in my slasher film above all else is I want, the slashing. I want there to be violent, gruesome kills, and I want them to be creative. That's the big thing, because there's another film, I'm late to review it. It's a Wonderful Knife. I got access to see that film early and then just didn't review it yet. That's a slasher film as well, but it's the kills in that film are very uncreative. They're very generic. They're mostly just knife-based, a throat slash here or a stabbing here or something like that. This film, not only are the kills violent and varied and creative, but they also incorporate like Thanksgiving elements into a few of them at least, that I think adds to the demented, dark comedy nature of it, and I love that. I love creative, violent kills in my slasher films, and this film delivers that in spades. Being Eli Roth, he's fluent and experienced in making film, and that includes horror films. So in terms of, I guess, securing the budget for this, but also I'm sure he has a little bit saved up in his piggy bank, and knowing the right people that do the right, visual and like style and practical effects and all that. Basically, that's the big one I'm looking at. It looks good. This film has good production value. Doesn't look like a crappy B movie on some mediocre cameras or something. This is a modern film. It looks the part. It's HD. It looks and has the aesthetic and the visuals of a well-produced film, and that helps to enhance its quality overall. I like that. And the story setup for this I actually like a lot. I don't know what it was about the whole opening sequence that is like and you see it in the trailer, so it's no plot twist. The whole plot of this is a Black Friday incident happens, and then a year later, someone who clearly was very affected by this incident starts killing the people that they believe to be responsible for it. Ergo, the opening for the film is like a ramp up to a classic American, or in this case, a Bostonian Black Friday event. And something satisfying about watching a bunch of just greedy, typical American humans just literally trample and mow each other down trying to get a waffle iron that's on sale or something. I don't know. It was satisfying. It was violent. They hold no punches, and yet the violence never seemed like it was over the top. It wasn't like Saw levels of gore, which can be said for the whole film. This film has, when the violence comes in, when people get sliced or diced or hit or cut up or whatever, it is very bloody. It is very gory in occasions, but yet it never felt like it was too much. There weren't geysers or fountains of blood like you'd see in Renfield. I don't know. So not to poo-poo on those films, but I like this kind of extreme violence, like in spurts, to highlight the kills. The main things this film suffers from, in my opinion, is the acting is inconsistent. I went with a few friends, and a couple of us liked it, and I think a couple of us didn't. One just said the acting in the entire film, in their opinion, was just bad, period. I think in the serious dramatic moments where it's them trying to be like, oh, what are we gonna do? The killer's out there. We gotta figure something out. Those moments definitely suffer. I shit you not, there is a line in this film where one of the jocks is talking to them. The killer already made a pun about this after the first kill in the movie happens, and then one of the kids, they're sitting there with the rest of their friends and like, guys, this is serious. If we don't do something, if we don't go out there and take care of this killer right now, we're all gonna be 50% off. Lines like that, it's like no human being would say that. But then again, you are watching a horror slasher film about Thanksgiving, and a Black Friday blowout and a killer killing in the name of all that. So I guess, sure, thematically it tracks. I kind of cared about our leading lady a little bit. There were a couple characters here and there that I thought were wholesome and that I wouldn't mind seeing make it to the end of the film, or they were funny or something. But overall, most of the characters, the two competing, like the boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, and then there's the other high school students and all this, I didn't care. You're coming to see them be dumb and get killed. No surprise there, and I was here for it. I guess you can call it a con. The film is formulaic. Part of it is figuring out who the killer or killers, because movies like to do that these days, but essentially figuring out who the killer could be. And I don't always figure it out. I figured it out in this one, so I felt proud about that. But elements of it are predictable. Setups for kills sometimes are telegraphed, or how the narrative's gonna go, or who's gonna survive what. Sometimes it would be a little bit of a violent surprise. So, I mean, it's not a huge attraction, but overall the film has your typical story beats and is fairly formulaic. Which in that regard as well, not that I'm complaining too much, because this is kind of what a horror slasher film is, but a lot of the film, or at least quite a few sequences, felt like they were just build-ups and setups for the next kill. Like, oh, this person died, now we're going to react to it and investigate, and then we're going to cut away to the next victim and then build that up, and just kind of build up these situations where it's like, oh, okay, we're putting these two characters aside, or we're putting this character aside to lead up to what is eventually going to be a kill. And that's fine, but it just sometimes it feels not forced, but like it's noticeable to someone like me who has watched so many films like this. Overall, I think Thanksgiving does more right than it does wrong. But here's the thing, if I'm being honest. If you don't like horror, you're not gonna like it. If you don't like or have a fondness for, or don't really, I don't want to use the word appreciate, but if you're not down to clown with a slasher film, it's not going to be up your alley, which is fine. I'm coming here to see a horror slasher film, and what do I want out of that? I want halfway decent acting. I want it to look good, practical effects, of which this film actually, I forgot to mention this, another pro, great practical effects when it can be, in terms of whether it's like fingers, hands, limbs, heads coming off or whatever. Eli Roth has always been very good about prosthetics and using practicality whenever possible, and this film is no exception. The visuals are gruesome and they look great. So tying that back into my little wrap up here, that's what I come for personally. But if you don't like horror, skip it. If you don't like horror slasher specifically, skip it. But that's what I came for, is all that I just described. I'm not expecting Oscar-winning performances here. I'm not expecting a film like Scream or Cabin in the Woods to put a twist on the genre, to reinvent the wheel, or make a super well-acted, engaging set piece and bring in Matthew Lillard or something. But this film met and slightly exceeded my expectations. And critics too. I was shocked to see reviews coming out for this film and they weren't like panning it. They're saying like, oh, this film's actually pretty good. Like, I know we're past the Halloween, but I love how we're getting away with it for Thanksgiving, so there's still some showtimes out there. Otherwise, it's worth a watch. If you're a fan of Eli Roth or like any of that, don't mind some gruesomeness and blood and gore and guts and all that stuff, then yeah, go for it. I would give Thanksgiving a low 4 out of 5. A low 4 out of 5. It's up there. Like I said, the film does more well than it does poorly, so I enjoyed it. I always like watching whatever Eli Roth puts out. It just he always makes a bloody, gory, fun, violent good time. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's questionable, but overall, in my opinion, he's still got it. He's still making some decent horror films. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'm once again falling behind on movie reviews, but hopefully I can slowly catch back up, and who knows, the end of the year is coming up pretty soon, so we'll see how it goes, if I can catch up in time for the Oscar season. Thanks, and stay tuned for the next one. Goodbye, travelers.